Now, how did this show up in the early church? And I want to real quickly do a Bible study on fasting, and then I want to get to Isaiah 58 and quit. Let's turn to Matthew 6, back to Matthew 6, and I'll give you a biblical fastology, okay? What does that mean? It means everything the Bible teaches about fasting in the New Testament, okay? And then we'll apply this and be done. Matthew 6 and verse 16 says this: biblical fasting was part of a normal life as a Christian. Why do I say that? Because when Jesus was talking about normal everyday Christian life, in Matthew 6, in the greatest sermon he ever preached, the Sermon on the Mount, look what he says in verse 16 of Matthew 6. Moreover, he said, when you fast. He didn't say, if you fast. He said, when you fast. By the way, when were those words written? They were written at least 20 years after the ascension. They were written for the purpose of the New Testament church by the apostle named Matthew. Now, Jesus spoke those words while he was on earth, but why were they recorded in the New Covenant book, the New Testament? Why? For us. And Jesus, speaking across the centuries, says, moreover, not if, when you fast. Look at verse 16. Don't be like hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear to men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. You know what he's saying? It's a normal part of your Christian life, and don't blow the horn about it. Don't come into the office, on Monday and say, well, I don't feel very good. I'm fasting for God today. That doesn't count. But if you fast with the intent of longing to know Christ and to know His power and to seek Him with all your heart, God will bless you. Let me show you how. Let's turn to the next one. Luke chapter 2, verse 36. And some of you will someday be old. I'm fast approaching. I listened to Paul's list. I feel old. Don't you, some of you. But look what it says in Luke 2, 36 and 37. Because secondly, not only was fasting a part of the normal Christian life, but biblical fasting is part of worshiping the Lord. I meet people all the time, and they say, oh, I can't go to the forefront. I can't go off to Wycliffe, and learn a language and translate the Bible. But you know what? You can be right on the forefront of doing God's work on this planet at any age if you learn about biblical fasting. Look at Luke 2:36. Now there was one Anna, a prophetess. Here's this woman, the daughter of Phanuel. We don't know anything else about her. A tribe of Asher. She was of great age. She lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity, which, now, there's two ways of taking this. Either it could be 7 years after she was 13, so she lived with him till she was 20, and it was, back then, possible to get married at that early age. So if that was true, that this fella died when she was 20, and then listen to this, she was a widow of 84 years. So what you could say is this gal is 104, or she's 84. It doesn't matter. Both are pretty old, right? What's she doing? Is she down at Walgreens complaining about how much her prescriptions cost? Is she upset because, the Meals on Wheels are bologna and white bread and she doesn't like it? No, what is she doing? This woman was a widow of 84 years who did not depart from the temple. But look at this. Can you tell I used to be a senior adult pastor? When I was with John MacArthur, my first assignment was I had the 864 senior citizens. Can you imagine about twice this many people every Sunday that were senior citizens, and one of them a week was dying like that? Can you imagine how you had to imagine things that would be applicable to them? Well, all the Bible was, and I used to hit on this one. Look at this. But served God with fasting and prayers night and day. Instead of complaining that I can't sleep, instead of complaining that everything aches, instead of complaining that nobody calls me or sends me cards or writes me, she stayed in the presence of God, stayed in the temple, and she served her God with fasting and prayers night and day. Biblical fasting is part of worshiping the Lord. Look at chapter 4 of Luke's Gospel, verse 2. Biblical fasting, thirdly, is part of Christ's method to prepare for facing the devil's temptation. Luke 4 and verse 2 says this: being tempted, we already read Matthew's version, this is Luke's version, being tempted 40 days by the devil, and in those days he ate nothing. Why did Jesus eat nothing while the devil was tempting him? Because he was showing us something. Jesus said in your life, you're also going to face the same temptations Satan gave him. What were they? The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. No temptation has taken us but such as is common to all of us. How do we face them? The way Jesus did. If you're struggling in this area, if you're struggling with honesty, if you're struggling with purity, if you're struggling with the domination or some part of your life being out of control, if you're struggling with fears or anxieties or lack of assurance, you want to overcome something. Jesus Christ said, the way I met and mastered and conquered and defeated the devil was 2 prongs. Fasting and the Word of God. We hear the Word of God part all the time, right? Haven't you always heard that? What did Jesus do? Every time he met the devil, he quoted the Bible. After he fasted. We leave that out. It's not fashionable to fast. It's powerful, though. Fasting was part of Christ's method to prepare for facing the devil.